She didn't grow up with money conversations, but she's building something far more powerful than a bank balance, a legacy of honesty.
My parents actually their marriage fell apart because of financial issues. So I learned in silence all the incorrect habits of planning and using my money. I've had to learn the hard way. And with many sacrifices, I eventually figured that if I don't take care of myself financially, no one else will.
Because you need to be brave. First of all, to look yourself in the mirror and go, I need to make these changes. And then it does. It takes taking a whole lot of your beliefs and going, they're no longer serving me.
My kids really just looked up to me, and I was the only example that they had. I wasn't much of an example in terms of teaching them financial planning, but I think since I've met Kim and I've started taking accountability for my life and my finances, and also just putting boundaries in place for my daughter and how I support her and how I now take care of myself going forward.
Is really, this is love. This is love when we do have those boundaries in place so that our children can be standing on their own, because there is nothing more satisfying or rewarding than when you've achieved something yourself.
Welcome back to Life Chapters Money Choices, the podcast where we explore the emotional heart of our financial lives and the transitions that shape us. I'm your host, Michael Avery, and of course we're joined again by Kim Potgieter, just to help us unpack the emotional legacy that we pass down through money, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unintentionally, without even knowing it. And I certainly grew up in a household where money wasn't really discussed, not in any meaningful or transparent way, but I do have an early memory of that perm savings book, and I got a small stipend for doing chores, and those small rituals, updating the book, tracking my pocket money, seeing how that was growing, it really helped build a quiet but steady disciplined habit around saving that I've really carried through with me into adulthood. It wasn't much, but it planted a seed. And I think for many of us, the money habits that we carry into adulthood, they start early, and not through what we're taught, but through what we absorb in silence as observers. And sometimes it's the silence that really speaks the loudest. So that's why this episode is so important. We're joined by Lauren, a mother and a grandmother who's had to rebuild her life and her finances, and it ended with her starting from scratch. She's found herself supporting not just her own future, but her daughter and grandchildren as well. And I think Lauren's story is layered. It's about sacrifice, it's about resilience, and it's about this ongoing tension between helping and enabling, between love and boundaries. And it's a conversation for anyone who's ever wondered, am I teaching my children the right things about money, or just repeating the lessons and sometimes the mistakes that our parents made as well? So, Lauren, it's great to have you with us. And first, I've got to just commend you for having the courage to come out and talk about something that often people don't talk about. They find it too deeply personal. So I really do appreciate that. Let's go right back to the beginning. What was your earliest memory of money when you were growing up? Do you have an early memory that kind of sticks out for you?
Yes, actually I do. My first job was with Standard Bank, and I'll never forget, with my first paycheck, I didn't know what to do with my money. I had never been taught how to plan my money or how to use my money. And my parents, actually, their marriage fell apart because of financial issues. So I learned in silence all the incorrect habits of planning and using my money. So that's my first, shall I say, memory of having to be an adult and dealing with money.
So it was more an example of absence than an example of active engagement around
Correct.
Money conversations around the dinner table. We never discussed anything like money around the dinner table, but there was, as I said in my intro, the occasional stipend for chores and that kind of thing. How did that then follow you through into your adult life?
I've had to learn the hard way. And with many sacrifices, I eventually figured that if I don't take care of myself financially, no one else will. And that also relates back to my 2 marriages, where I expected someone else to support and be there for me, but ultimately it was my responsibility.
And I think it's emblematic of so many stories, Kim, when you hear what Lauren is talking about, the early memory and the lack of a real conversation around money, but then also going into a marriage thinking, well, my partner's going to support me and I don't need a plan B. I mean, when did you first meet Lauren?
So I met Lauren now when she's starting to take care of herself. I mean, she came to see me when she decided she wanted to make a change, and now she was going to take it seriously. And together with the work we've been doing, we've identified, and as she's just shared with you now, that it's up to her. So the plan we're putting in place is that her at the center of it, not other people at the center, but her at the center of it. And if she can look after herself, then she can be of value to her daughter or grandchildren or her son. And I think that for me has been very commendable, because you need to be brave. First of all, to look yourself in the mirror and go, I need to make these changes. And then it does. It takes taking a whole lot of your beliefs that you've accumulated and going, they're no longer serving me. Can I rather come up with new beliefs that are actually going to serve me?
Those beliefs, I mean, it's layered that. We can go into the cultural nuance of why we are raised to think that we'll only ever be in one marriage and it'll be a single income, single breadwinner relationship. And, I'll stay at home and raise the kids and my husband will just always be there. And, life isn't like that. For you, Lauren, to look very deeply internally when you were having these early conversations through your divorces, how did that shape the money conversations you started having with your own children?
Well, that's very interesting. My kids really just looked up to me, and I was the only example that they had. I wasn't much of an example in terms of teaching them financial planning until they were adults. And unfortunately, my daughter, when she matriculated, struggled, and she's been with me since she completed school, and also has 2 children, which I also support. So I support them emotionally and financially. So unfortunately, she didn't learn the lesson. My son did, however. He is quite independent, and also our relationship took some strain because of my support and financial assistance for his sister. So it has created issues in our relationships. But I think since I've met Kim and I've started taking accountability for my life and my finances, and also just putting boundaries in place for my daughter and how I support her and how I now take care of myself going forward, I really do appreciate Kim's input with that.
Wow, it's a really tough conversation, that. I mean, Kim, how does one approach putting guardrails or boundaries in when the maternal instinct is just to wrap your arms around your children and help them, but often you need a bit of tough love in an environment like that?
And exactly what you say, Michael. It's putting your arms around them and helping them. And so many times, and I think it's our generation, as a woman also in her 50s, we had harder childhoods in a way. And I think as this generation, we want to go out there and we want to help our children in a way so that they don't have to feel the pain that we felt.
Yeah.
And I've seen it as mistakes we all making. But what that has meant for us is that we maybe haven't given our kids the grit that they needed, when adversity hits. So for me, and the work that Lauren and I have been doing together is really, this is love. This is love when we do have those boundaries in place so that our children can be standing on their own, because there is nothing more satisfying or rewarding than when you've achieved something yourself. And I think when we're doing it with love to give them so much, but often that isn't what they're needing to feel like that they've achieved it themselves. And so as hard as it is with those maternal feelings, I think there's a different kind of love by putting in these boundaries.
Yeah, wow, it's so powerful. I can deeply relate. My ex-wife, through the divorce, was just lacking structure and purpose and the ability to find her kind of North Star until she started working again and until she started putting herself out there. And immediately she found a renewed purpose. And she said to me, Michael, you know what, I've started working full time. COVID was very difficult. But now our daughters, they look up to her and they say, wow, Mom, we're so proud of what you're doing. and it's now filtered back into her own self-esteem, and it becomes this virtuous upward cycle. But it's almost as if you've got to hit like some kind of rock bottom first. I don't know, Lauren, how you came to this realization that, right, I need external help because what I've been through and what I'm doing just clearly isn't taking me to where I want to be.
I think after my second marriage and having poured myself into the marriage financially and emotionally, and then having lived with nothing and having to start all over again, I think it really just taught me that I needed to put boundaries in place for myself, to love myself, be able to say no so that I can say yes to me. And that's basically what Kim has really brought alive to me, is that if I don't put myself first and do this for me, there won't be a better future for myself or for my kids and my grandkids.
Yeah, it's that old adage, Kim, you can't give from an empty cup or a half full cup. You can really only start giving to people once your own cup is fulfilled. How do you start this process? How did you start the process with Lauren?
So really for Lauren and I, it was the life planning meeting. You know, we start there. So she came to us to be her financial planner, so that we could be that objective sounding board. And we could be that person that challenged her thinking. So she was open. I think the place to start is to give Lauren all the credit. She was open and she was ready. Because you can come and find the teacher, but if you're not ready, it's a waste of time. So she was ready for it. So we started with the life planning, and the life planning really was that meeting where we worked out for her, if this next chapter is going to be her best yet, and she's in early midlife, like what's it going to look like? And I watched her come alive in that meeting as she shared what she wanted. And then mentioning that she really wanted to be a good role model, not only to her children, but also to her grandchildren. And I think with that in mind, she knew she was going to do this. So I really don't think it had anything to do with me. She was ready for it, and she was ready to take that step. She now just has an accountability partner.
An accountability partner. I love the concept of that. So what does that mean for you personally, Lauren, to have this accountability partner to kind of help, keep you in line sometimes when you say, right, this is what you said you're going to do, but you're veering off. It's almost like having that personal trainer in your financial and your psychological life.
Yes, I think for a long time I haven't had anyone to be accountable to except for me. And I really needed to find someone I could trust to learn more than what I had the learnings that I had accumulated over the past 50 odd years. And I was very grateful when I found Kim and Tiffany. The sessions with them have really, really enabled me to look at my finances, look at my life, and everything that is touched by my finances. And that was very deep for me. It just made me realize, and with having Tiffany there as well, that I need to be more considerate of how I spend my money for the better future of myself and my kids, like I've said.
And Tiffany is?
So Tiffany is the financial planner that works with us.
Okay.
Because we have the life planning and we say, oh, well, this is what we want. But Michael, the really aha moment comes in when you have a look at, this is what I want and this is what I have. As I say, that's the aha moment. Because
and this is the gap.
This is the gap. And when you know what it is you're aiming towards, so, it's not just like there's a monetary value to it and, oh, there's this much money that we have to get to.
Yeah.
But there's a whole lot of reasons why you're getting there. Now, all of a sudden, the why is in place. And when we're talking about accountability partner, where Tiffany comes in is how? How am I getting there?
Yeah.
What are the steps that I need to take place? So that's why I'm saying, for Lauren, she has to do all the hard work. We've kind of set up, this is where you are, this is where you want to go. These are the steps that you need to do, but she's got to go do all those steps.
And that's not easy. And I mean, you just mentioned that the relationship with your son had become more strained, and one can see that also probably comes from a place of love, and your son seeing that, you're giving too much when you need to be looking after yourself as well. But how do you navigate that self-doubt that maybe I'm not doing the right thing, or am doing the right thing, but I'm feeling now it's a bit selfish because it's all about me? How do you navigate that?
That's very difficult, Michael. I struggle with it every day, to be honest with you. It's hard work, working on my boundaries and being true to myself. I've also had countless conversations with my son about how I support his sister more than I do him, and how much time and effort I put into that relationship versus with him. And I've had to admit to him that I know where he's coming from, but I couldn't turn my back on her when she needed me the most. So it's not easy for a parent who has 2 kids and need to balance the time, effort, and support that I give.
But now that you've taken such a proactive step, and you've been open, as Kim said, to really re-actualizing what your life can be at this kind of, and I feel like I'm in a very similar stage of midlife, and you think, well, there's still so much left. So, what is this next chapter going to look like? What has that reception been like from your children and your grandchildren as well?
Well, I think it was daunting at first for my daughter. My son is very excited about the process. He read Kim's article and he was quite excited. And I think it mended our relationship to a certain extent, because he realized that I am now taking accountability for me and the decisions that I'm making for them going forward.
Well, Kim, that's music too. I mean, I can see how you're smiling, but that's really the role that you're playing here is one of almost family counselor as well as financial advisor and kind of wealth planner and life coach and all of these things wrapped up. It's layered, isn't it?
Yes, and Michael, maybe for me, when you see the smile on my face, it's because the conversation has been had.
Yeah.
I mean, I come from a family where I was in a very dysfunctional home around money. I mean, you could interview me for about 4 episodes.
Oh, don't worry, I will.
You have to delve into my relationship with money and where it came from. And we never got the opportunity to have these conversations. So the reason I do this as a career is, and I sometimes think I'm a financial planner in disguise, because I want people to have conversations around money, and I want people to be able to talk to their children about these things and not leave people having these grudges and these conversations going on in their heads and never getting to share them, because I've seen too much resentment getting built up. So my smile comes from the fact, really, that Lauren was brave enough to have the conversations and that she let her son read the article, and that she actually is sitting here today brave enough for us to share this conversation with other people that might have a similar situation in their own home, and maybe they hearing this, it might encourage them to have a conversation.
That's why we're doing this. I mean, it really is the very heart of why we've launched this podcast series, is to have these very hard, deep down, searching, honest conversations around money. I do think, and I hate to put kind of a gender lens on it, but I do think women in particular are so vulnerable because of South African society being what it is. It's very conservative. It's still very patriarchal. And I meet so many women who are in a similar boat to yours, Lauren, who put all of their eggs in one particular basket, and then that basket breaks. And then you ask yourself, well, then what? So how is that changing the conversation you're having? Because we have to learn the lessons now with your grandchildren, for example, and your daughter, to see, that we can better equip the next generations.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, we had a meeting with Tiffany, my kids and I, discussing my estate planning, and that they are my accountability partner, and also, advising them that they should do the same, which they will. So they're looking at things that they haven't thought about before, like their wills and the grandkids, how they will be taken care of. And it's just opened up, so much for all of us as a family. So,
well, that's massive progress. I mean, Kim, that really is massive, massive progress. But what does it take to shift from these kind of inherited patterns to more intentional teaching, especially if you're still dealing with your own growth and your own trauma, past trauma, and healing?
For me, it does start with just recognizing, first of all, that you have a relationship with money. So I'm always surprised when I mention to people that they have a relationship with money. They look at me and say, do I really? And yet the relationship with money starts like when you're a small child and you're observing. And actually, we've just heard Lauren say, even in her estate planning. So we're planning for our whole lives around this money conversation, but we haven't understood that we've got a relationship with money. So that's my number one place. If we can just recognize we have a relationship with money, and then we need to start looking at how much of this is unconscious and how much of it is conscious, because there's a whole part of it that's not conscious. And so what Lauren's doing with her kids by bringing them into the meetings, it is really a great place to be doing it all together. So they're in an environment when they come in and meet with their planner where it's not pointing fingers, it's not all emotionally charged. It's just we all in this together having this conversation.
And not secret.
And not secret. Yes. This whole secrecy thing around money just is absolutely so unnecessary.
But that's where, I grew up in a household where you just didn't talk about money because, Dad did the money thing and no one knew and no one spoke about it until his business collapsed. And then all of a sudden, retirement savings were locked up in that business and kind of forced that out into the open. It was also a very difficult period in the house because we had just never created a safe space to ever talk about. It was just a secret thing. Given what you've gone through now, Lauren, and if you were to go back and give your younger self some money advice or life advice around money and this relationship with money, what would it be?
It would definitely be to be selfish and put myself first. I think we give too much, especially as women. We pour ourselves into relationships and we put our kids first, and we always last on the list. So I would say always putting yourself first and be selfish.
Yeah, I think, and that's a lot easier said than done, isn't it, Kim, to get to that point?
Maybe it's even just changing that word. It's not selfish, because what it is it's been a good role model to all of them. It's showing, like that self-love, and then it teaches them to have the same with themselves. So, if we could maybe just change the language in that. I don't believe
how
that
we frame it.
What Lauren's done at all is being selfish. What I do think she's doing is she's been a great role model. And I think they're going to change their family story around money. Yeah. And for me, that's the exciting part. They're going to change it in a way that something like money that's just an enabler that's caused a lot of destruction and hurt for them is going to be in a different place now because they're bringing it out in the open, and it's not going to have that same power because it's been spoken about.
Yeah, and then you break that cycle. Yeah. What are the kinds of practices that you've now put in place to improve your financial position that you're trying to turn into really good money habits, Lauren?
Well, together with Tiffany, we've come up with a plan where I budget better, and I invest more. And I can see the future benefits that I will be reaping with investing and planning ahead for not just me, but for my kids and my grandkids.
Yeah, that spending plan that we were talking about, Kim.
Yes, not easy.
So often, what happens is, because of love, we go out and we'll buy more and more things for people because we're wanting to show them that we love them.
Yeah.
And then we see it also. Well, we all do.
I fell into that trap straight, after the divorce. I would shower my daughters with things. I would buy them whatever they wanted. And eventually, those things didn't mean much because they knew they could just say, Daddy, we want something. And out of guilt more than anything, I would go and do it. And I realized I had to be really intentional that is actually not the way you go about it.
And I think that's exactly what Lauren's talking about. I remember in our first meeting, her sharing with me that if she went to the shop, she'd come back with a whole lot of clothes and things and for the grandchildren. And she'd love that feeling of coming in, doing their birthday parties beautifully for them, but having, in a way, a whole lot of abundance around it. And the conversation that we went with, well, what is more important? And the more important part came that she could have a sustainable plan. And that's where the investments came in. Because if those investments have been put away, they are working for her when, making interest, and let's call it babies, but they're growing. And in that way, what she's going to be able to do, it's going to make it much more sustainable. Otherwise, now she's working so hard. She's now in her early 50s, but I don't believe in retirement necessary at, a certain age, but why does she have to keep working so hard? And only because if she doesn't have the investment. So this way, for me, there was just a little bit more balance. And I was looking to help her just find a little bit more balance. It wasn't no life and only investing. It was how do we get both return on life and return on investment?
And getting that balance right. Have you found that a challenging a journey to walk so far, or because you were receptive? Sometimes it's the right time. When I quit smoking, it was just the right time. But firstborn, and that was 11 years ago, put out my last cigarette, didn't smoke again.
Well done.
It was just the right time. But I know many stories of people who've struggled. Was it the right time for you? Did you struggle, or have you found it easier?
I think initially I struggled, but I think just being in midlife and just realizing that I need to plan and think differently, it's definitely the right time for me.
And I've got to ask you, Lauren, I mean, you've walked a long and winding path. What gives you hope right now versus where you were 5-10 years ago?
Well, I'm so excited. I'm excited that I have a life plan. I'm excited that I can see what I'm investing in. I'm excited that my kids and my grandkids have a better future because of this process.
That relationship is healing. And I mean, that's ultimately, that's the most precious commodity that we have.
Yes. I love what Kim said about having a relationship with money, because it seeps through to my relationships with my kids and everyone else.
How do we do that then, Kim? If someone's listening to this podcast today and they say, I want to have a better relationship myself with money, but I also want my children or my grandchildren to start thinking about that relationship, where's a good place to start?
Well, first it's for you to look at yourself in the mirror and find out where yours is, because those children, your children and your grandchildren are watching you. It's not often what we say, it's what we're doing. So I think to be more conscious and to realize that they're watching everything you do. And I believe in really involving children from quite a young age, having these conversations. I don't believe we should be, like we've been chatting, keep it a secret. And when does it come? When is the right time to talk to people about money? I mean, our relationships with money, from all the research I've done, are formed by the age of 7. So, and yet we're not wanting to talk to children about money.
Yeah.
But they're watching us and they're observing. So bringing it into normal dinner conversation, and it's not one of those things that it's taboo. We're not talking about how we have to have lots of it to see value, but it's more around the meaning. What is true wealth?
Yeah.
You know, what's important with us as a family? I mean, as you worked out with your daughters, it wasn't that you were buying them more things, Michael. I'm quite sure that they wanted to spend more time with you.
Yeah.
And just by talking to them, even though you're saying your daughters are young, they could have given you those answers. And sometimes our kids are way wiser than us.
Yeah. And, through that innocence, often they have the answers, which we tend to overcomplicate through years and cynicism and bad experiences. But I think if Lauren's story is anything, it's a powerful reminder that the most valuable things we can pass down to our children aren't materials or money. It's mindset. It's that attitude and understanding why that relationship exists in the first place, and that love and boundaries can coexist, and that mistakes can be part of the teaching, and that it's never too late to change the narrative for yourself. So a heartfelt thank you to Lauren for opening your heart and for your honesty and your courage, and good luck in the journey that you're undertaking, because I can see how much joy it's bringing you and how it's turned things around, and really just a great pleasure to share your story here on the podcast with Kim Potgieter. Remember, if today's conversation has moved you or just made you think about money stories that you're telling to your children or in your own family, please share the episode with someone that you love. Share it with your networks, and don't forget to subscribe to Life Chapters Money Choices wherever you listen to your podcast. Until next time, I'm Michael Avery, and thanks for tuning in.